If we increase the energy, it would stand to reason that we increase the charisma. But first, we've got to figure out what's blocking it. The fundamental purpose of charisma is giving the people that you interact with an almost consciousness expanding interaction with higher energy. That requires getting a coherence and a synergy in all the parts. Okay, so when I'm talking about the parts, I can just draw it right here. We're talking about the so-called human energy system. That's a terrible name for it. We need something like less wieldy. If anyone's got an idea, you can tell me. So the innermost, most nuanced energies up here going down and out towards external expression. Right, so here we've got universal energy. You could call this chi, life force, radiance, inner radiance, you can call it whatever you want. Universal energy, downwards through the higher observer. And this is a part of you that kind of views and synthesizes everything below it from a more objective standpoint, aside from the ego. Then down here, we have the intuition. Next, we have the inner emotional process. And then below that, we've got the mind. And then below that, we've got facial expression and eye contact, musculature of the face surrounding the eyes and the eye contact focus process. And then below that, we have body language. And then finally, we have the voice and vocal tonality. And then this, again, moving downwards and outwards to outer expression. Most people view their communication as this generalized kind of gestalt, right? This generalized whole. Like I just talk. You know, I just, it's me, here I am. And you look at yourself in the mirror, you're like, okay, there's Jeff. I'm clearly one autonomous unit, right? But there's, again, these various subsystems that are sometimes in agreement, they're sometimes conflicting, sometimes supporting, sometimes enhancing, sometimes disagreeing. So it's kind of interesting to think about this and break it down like this and realize that each one of these systems is attempting to assert what it believes is best for the well-being of the overall organism. You know what I'm saying? So again, the face, the voice, the body all have intuitive understandings of how to express things. Like for example, right now, I'm making facial expressions, I'm making gestures, I'm putting different language musicality, I'm changing the pitch, speed, rhythm of my voice, volume of my voice in subtle ways that I'm not thinking about beforehand. It just seems right, right? Like even that, what did I do there? It just seems right. I didn't plan that. I didn't plan that either, or that. So yeah, the control is in process. So it's an intuitive control. Now, going inwards and upwards, then you've got this guy here. This guy can be a bridge or a barrier between the inner and outer. Is it a bridge or is it a barrier? The mind is not a villain. It's very useful. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It can analyze, it can remember, learn from the past, imagine the future optimistically and hopefully, make plans. What can it also do, though? It can also judge. And that is where the vast majority of our problems come up. From a culturally conditioned, addictive need to judge and be judged by others. So what will very often happen, and this is where the so-called I run out of things to say comes, there will be an intuitive impulse of something to say or do. The mind then will sense a potential change in either the quality or quantity of emotional energy being output. And through our conditioning, we are conditioned to believe that emotional expression is dangerous. It's potentially threatening. It can make us seem silly or stupid or pushy or aggressive or whatever. So we need to evaluate this for the potential danger or usefulness before we allow that access to the outside. Now, of course, what's the problem? There is no timeout in an interaction for you to actually make that judgment call. So then by the time that you've actually made that judgment, either the moment is past and you say it and the timing seems off, and it seems like you're second guessing yourself and thus insecure, it's subtly conveying insecurity. Or two, much more likely, you simply don't say it at all. And then that's it, you're just stifled. You're just that guy that says nothing, right? So what we want to do, is through exercise, we want to increase the amount of time that your mind spends in useful and productive activity, as opposed to being this judgmental hindrance. And that's very possible, right? Going inwards upwards, you've got the emotional process, or processes, right? If you look in the brain, to the best of our understanding, there is no emotional system in the brain. It's a series of different systems. The one that we're most likely concerned with at any given time is what? Fear and defense response. Generally, anxiety triggers around social humiliation, which to the best of our knowledge cannot be removed. They're indelible. And again, we could argue whether these are learned triggers or these are instinctual triggers. I believe that they're a combination of the two. But how are you going to be able to navigate that? How are you going to be able to cool off those triggers? How are you going to be able to take action in spite of those feelings, those very real and very powerful feelings of self-preservation? Okay? Going inwards and upwards, then you have your intuition. Many people discount intuition, and it's been discounted in our educational system as well. Educational system does what? It emphasizes rote solutions to problems through established equations and means. Logic, in other words. And hey, logic's great. Logic made the lights work in this room. Logic built the pyramids, right? However, logic isn't always great. Empiricism, rationality isn't always great. Look at the word rationalization. What is that? That's a pejorative term that we use to describe bad judgment, faulty guesses, faulty reasoning. So I think that a lot of times, especially in social situations, you don't have all of the information. Like, the brain wants to say, I need all of the data to arrive at the correct thing to do here. There is no correct thing to do in a given interaction, especially when we're talking about creating a vibe and just talking for the sake of creating a good emotional feeling. There is no right answer. And so many people, in a situation where there is no right or wrong answer, they're completely at a loss of what to say, unless they're told exactly what to say, at least in the beginning. You know, sometimes we do various improvisational exercises that work with gibberish. You guys know what gibberish is? It's a made-up language that communicates with the syntax of its musicality, not with the syntax of meaning. Many people, so it's interesting. For many people, students, the gibberish is almost like a Rorschach test of how in tune they are with intuitive energies. Many people can't even speak a single syllable of gibberish when they first start. They're so afraid, like when they're faced with a blank page where there is no wrong answer, they can't come up with anything. They're like, I can't, or in general improv, they're like, I can't think of anything to say or do. There's always something to say or do. You can always do something. Do that. But again, they can't let go of that judgment. So again, you cannot really exercise intuition per se. You can exercise the allowing function. You can train yourself to allow it more. And then that's when you start to just spit off the dome. That's when you get the so-called $1 million mouthpiece. But it takes a lot of trust in yourself. It takes a lot of trust in your faculties. And you have to learn to trust intuition. Right? Intuition, it's not magic. It doesn't draw answers out of nothing. But the mind is only able to work with what's consciously available to it in the cognitive working space. Right? What can be pulled up? What can be pulled up? Like information that has been specifically dredged up out of memory and put on the marquee here. It can deal with that. It can also deal with a couple things in the environment. Again, studies have shown that you can hold about 7 pieces of information in the cognitive working space at one time. I don't want that being, especially in an interaction, I don't want that being taken up with nonsense like, what do I say? I want that being taken up with, where am I in the interaction? What's the next step? What are the behaviors that I need to exhibit in order to get there? Number two, and actions I need to take to get there. Number two, what are they giving me emotionally and how can I modulate my tone to kind of ride that wave? Number three, what's the evolving logistical situation? Are there any obstacles? Can I circumnavigate these obstacles? Should I continue? Again, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm not down here in the weeds. What do I say? What do I say, Jeff? I use my intuition like a magic 8-ball. I just shake it up. Whatever bubbles to the surface, I'm just like that, and I trust. It's not the content that they're going to be attracted to, it's the vibe. I'm going to use, again, my language musicality, my various facial expressions, my gestures, movement, proximity, touch. I'm going to use those things to make it compelling, to make it interesting. And then simultaneously, then I'm going to employ, and that's going to make them look here and give me the time to execute my horizontal plot development. Because I'm doing that too. I mean business. When I'm in there, I mean fucking business. I'm moving it forward very methodically. Smoothly, but methodically. I'm not just lingering in there and again, reveling in this narrative stasis with the vibe. That's the thing, you gotta have both. You gotta have both. But again, so what is intuition though? Really, again, mind can only work with what's consciously available to it. Intuition can work with information that is not consciously available to you, but that was acquired in the past. Sometimes even acquired subconsciously.